Okay, so now that we've gone through the general outline of the packet, let's go ahead and start putting together a plan of study for you. So let's start with a sense of what a plan of study looks like. The goal today for you is to just figure out your fall semester. We will sit down with you in the fall about mid-semester and lay out the next 3 semesters after that. And then sometime in your sophomore year, typically in the fall, we'll go through and lay out the rest of the plan of study for you until you graduate. So let's start with just fall. So in fall semester, if you were coming in with AP scores in calculus and ready to start with this plan, you would do your careers class, you do a chemistry class, you do math, and then you would do a couple of gen ed classes. Now this obviously depends on what you've done already and what your goals are as far as different directions in your career when you graduate and what classes are most important to you at this point in your education. So let's take a look at the first thing that we need from you. And this is the actual thing that I need you to prepare and then go ahead and turn in to one of the advisors. So this is the form. Erica already went through and gave you kind of a basic outline of what it is. And I want you to go ahead and when you're done with this presentation, or you can go back and look at this offline and get at the information that you need out of the packet to fill this out. But get a copy of this. There'll be a version of this, a self-standing document on Canvas, and go ahead and fill it out. So we're going to fill out my information here. So Kelly Broadhead. Put in our date, so it is the 5/29/2020, and that I'm a first year student coming in. Now we need to know some information about your background. So I need to go ahead and put in this particular cell what math classes I did, but the last one specifically in high school, not counting statistics kind of classes. So the last class I took in high school was Calc AB, okay? And then same thing for chemistry. The last chemistry class I took in high school was AP Chem. So I filled those out. Then I come over here and I put in my ACT score. So my high school math ACT score was a 30. I took the AB exam, got a 5 on it. I did not take the BC exam. And then I took high school chemistry, so I'm going to mark it as yes on here. And then I took AP chemistry, and I got a 4 on it. Okay, so that's the first step. It's got our prerequisite work done on it, and now we can go ahead and start laying in the classes that we need to do. So based on the plan of study, the first one we're going to put in here is a BME class. So I want you all to write in 10-10. So that's your first biomedical engineering class. It's a careers class, goes through and talks about things that you can do as far as this major, what kind of career paths and development you need to be going through, and some other general advising things that are part of that. So that's a 1 credit class. The next class we're going to do is a math class. The question is which one? We had to think about that still. I'll show you how to go through and do that. The next class after that is some form of chemistry class for most of you. Again, I don't know which one. And then a GE class, and I'm going to put a double question mark on here. That depends on what you want to do for your gen eds. And so for some of you, maybe you came in with an associate's degree or enough concurrent enrollment or AP classes, or you're going to take a CLEP exam in college to get out of something like your US history class. So there are different ways to go ahead and do gen eds besides taking a formal class, but I'm going to put those in there right now as a gen ed, and we'll come back and talk about some possibilities there. So this is a typical semester. And then you may throw something else in here that's just purely for your edification, not to get your degree done any faster, but something that you just really are interested in. Maybe it's a pursuit in a language, or a pursuit in some kind of recreational activity, or a performing arts, and you want to do something in that space. And so you put those in there. So let's get the first one figured out. That's the math piece. So when we go down here, the next page we have is some information about math. Now, at the University of Utah, you come in and get placed into math based primarily on ACT scores or SAT equivalents and or your AP scores if you took AP. And some students, they took IB, and there's actually, you need to work with the math department if you took the higher level IB classes, and then they can figure out a placement for you off of those. Now, this is advising from us onto what class you should be going into. The reality is the placement into math is strictly dictated by the math department. And so these are based on their guidelines as to which class you can go into. You could be placed into Math 1010. As you can see, if you scored an 18 or higher, then you can go into 1010. If you score below an 18, then there's a remedial math class you can take to get up to that point. There's also the possibility of taking AccuPlacer exams to overcome almost all of these and get it to higher levels. So if you feel like you're getting placed into a class that is below where you were in high school, typically the remedy to that is to take an AccuPlacer exam and go down that path. In some cases, there's also a path where you could take a boot camp that's offered by the math department. And part of that boot camp is typically a time when you take the AccuPlacer, but there's also review sessions that go through and get you prepared to take that exam and do well on it. So there's different pathways through this you can take. You can go from 1010 to 1050, 1060, and then on to your calculus. Same way, 1010 through 1080, and then on the calculus. This saves you one semester because you don't have to do 2 separate semesters through the 1050 and 1060. Okay, most of you will probably be somewhere between this level and this level, so that's where you're going to start. Now, I do have students who have higher AP scores that move them all the way down to some of the advanced levels here, and I have students that start all the way down here. It really doesn't matter where you start. What's more important is the foundation. You need to have a strong math foundation that is with you as part of your experience in life, something that you carry as a foundation, that when you go into your engineering class, you're not struggling with the math that you're doing. And so I recommend to certain students all the time that they step back from where they were in one of these higher level classes and seriously consider doing Math 1080 to build that foundation. Okay, now there's different ways of doing that. You can spend the rest of the summer doing some review of your college level algebra and trig type exposures you took in high school and making sure you're up to the level and ready to start your calculus. But strong foundations in algebra lead to strong foundations in your calculus, and strong foundations in your calculus and algebra lead to strong foundations in your ODEs and linear algebra piece. And then keeping this knowledge you get in ODEs, linear algebra with you as you go into your engineering classes in mechanics and electronics, you're actually able to keep up with the math that exists in those classes. So don't let it ever get rusty. As part of what you have as an engineer is your ability to communicate through mathematics. Okay, so which class do you pick? So I've got some things guiding down through here that help and some scores up through here, but I got another sheet in here. I think it's a little bit quicker to figure this out. So if you look at this math placement guide and you start on this sheet at the very bottom and then look at the bottom criteria, start working up, you're able to find the right class. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is you don't have to fulfill everything in a particular cell. As an example, this cell here says you have to have a 3 or higher on your AP/AB score, a 28 or higher on your ACT math score, or an SAT score 650 or higher. It's an or between each of these. You just have to get one of these done. If all the other ones are below that level, but one is above the level, you actually meet the criteria and you're ready to do Math 1310. So go ahead and go down that path. Now, another question that comes up, do I take Math 1310 or do I do Math 1210? They have exactly the same criteria on here. My rule of thumb is that when you look at these flows through here, 1310 here versus 1210 here, take the engineering version. You're actually going to learn math that's applicable to problems you're going to run into your engineering classes, and you get a better foundation. It's actually been demonstrated in the grades received in Math 2250. The students that have gone through this path get much better grades, like a whole letter grade better in this class than students that have gone through this path. So take this path. It's a harder path, but it gets you better prepared for this. And so being prepared, like I said, is really foundational and going through this pathway helps do that. Now the other piece in here, you don't have to complete 2310 before you take Math 2250. You can do them in either order. Ideally, Math 2250 should be taken in the fall of your sophomore year so you can start your upper division classes in the spring. If it gets delayed past that, then you're going to not start your upper division classes until a year later. So keep that in mind. So it's very possible to flip the order of these classes, the 2310 and the 2250. So again, look at this sheet, start at the bottom and work up until you find the right criteria. Now, you may feel a little bit nervous about what math class to go into, that you're afraid that maybe it's too hard or you're not ready to start at that level. That's something to talk to us about. So if you are scheduled based on this to start in, say, Math 1311, and you're wondering, hey, that word accelerated and honors and engineering is a little daunting to you, don't first be scared of it, because it's actually a great class. And secondly, if you are still afraid of a class like that, with all the nice adjectives added to it, talk to us and we can help give you a little bit of a better sense of what's going on. From my perspective, I'll give you this. Math 1311 and Math 1310 follow very similar pathways as timelines. 1311 does go slightly faster through the AB component of calculus. Essentially, it gets done with that piece of it about 2 weeks faster than the 1310 class and moves into the 1320 level material partway through the semester, whereas you don't start that until the second semester with the traditional engineering calculus class. So by the time you're done, the difference between the two classes is essentially 1 credit worth of material. So across a class that is 8 hours long in one, the other one's 9 hours to complete everything. So if you had the appropriate experience in high school with an AP calculus class, don't be afraid of it. You're going to start back at the beginning, go through everything again. It'll just be at a rate that won't get you bored. But go ahead and talk to us about it if you're afraid. Nothing wrong with feeling confidence. Now, the other one that we need to get scheduled in here is chemistry. So going through and picking the right chemistry class is something you need to do. In my case, I said that I had a 4 score on the AP. So again, start at the bottom of the sheet and start working up. Here's the AP Chem 4 on here, and that says that I could start in Chemistry 1220. Let's say you had a 5 on the AP score and you are a pre-med student, you would actually start at that level as well, because the University of Utah's medical school will only waive you out of 1 semester of chemistry with AP scores. So again, Chemistry 1220. If you had a 5 and you're not pre-med, then you can actually skip chemistry in your first year and then go ahead and take OChem in your second year without that. Now this applies for the class components of the material. The labs are separate. You actually have to fulfill the labs in college or get waived out of them based on your high school lab notebook. And so you'll have to submit that lab notebook to the chemistry department's advisors for them to look at it and get a sense. So you'll have to email them and set up a time to do that. They haven't worked out exactly how they're doing that this year. The final thing, I already gave you your 1010 class. In the spring, you'll go into 1020, and in the following fall, you do 2100, and then start your upper division classes in the spring of your sophomore year, if you are calc ready this coming semester. Okay, so let's go back and put some of those other things into my plans. So the first one was, because of my calculus 5 score on AB, I'm going to do 1311. And I think anybody that's got a 4 or 5 this year, then go ahead and doing 1311. If you did the calculus last year, then I would suggest doing a boot camp before starting just to get refreshed, but you're still eligible to do that. If it's been 2 years, you actually would have to do the boot camp for sure to get it reinstated, because any score other than a 5 on the BC exam, the scores expire after 2 years. So 1311 into there. And then I'm going to put in my chemistry, 1210, and then there's a lab that goes with it, and 1215. That comes to 4 plus 1 credit. So 4 credits for the class, 1 credit for the lab, and then 4 credits here for that class. And that brings us to 10 credits total. So what are we going to do in Gen Ed? So that is the last piece that you need to worry about at this point, if you worry about classes at all. Hopefully you're looking forward to classes. And so Gen Ed wise, you have already gone through a module on this, but I'm just going to tell you this. When you're picking Gen Ed classes, you can actually do some double dipping. As an example, diversity here, if you take a survey of jazz, you can get your diversity done and one of your fine arts. So that's great. And then same thing, if you take world music, it gets out of your other fine arts and your international requirement. Now, I just picked those particular two because they're fairly low hanging fruit, but there are a ton of classes that do that, including for those who maybe aren't calculus ready this year. You can take the engineering elite program and get the same thing where you get out of one of your humanities classes, one of your social science classes, and get a diversity done by just taking 2 classes. So those are some great ways to accelerate the process. And so consider what you need to do here. An important part of this is to be aware of your AP scores. You can use this as a guide to get a sense of what AP counts towards your degrees, but the final decision on this really is something you should be aware of, and that's doing a My Degree audit, going in and doing that after you get your AP scores and concurrent enrollment in from your high school, college class combinations. Just make sure you get transcripts in, and once those are processed, your degree audit will be accurate and show you what's going on. Now, keep in mind, if you don't have your AP scores sent to the U and you're trying to get into a class like math, you can't do it until those scores report. And so go online, check with the College Board to make sure your AP scores are being sent to the University of Utah, because if you wait until July, when you find out you can't get in your AP class at that point, then it's going to take another 2 or 3 weeks to get your scores in and processed. So doing it now is a good idea. So let's go back and finish this schedule. So the last thing in here I would do this semester, since I didn't take AP writing in high school, is I'm going to do my writing 2010 class and get that done. That's 3 more credits. Okay. Now, for those who are doing honors, you could do a slightly different schedule here. You do BME, 1010. You do the same math class, since that class counts for honors. And then I do chemistry, 1211 and 1240. You will need permission codes for that class. There is a link on the main university catalog that takes you to a web page where you fill it out to get permission codes to that class. So it's by a petition process to get into it. And then I would do honors 2211 in here. Now, these are all just based on certain things. You can pick things based on what you've already done in a high school and what you need to do. For us, we need to have you put together a plan in here that has your 1010, your appropriate math class, and your appropriate chemistry class filled out, and then send us a copy of it. And then we will correspond with you on setting up a time. At that point, if there's any question about honors or about other classes that maybe you can consider going here, you can have a conversation with us about it, and then we get you locked into exactly what you need to do. Once you've completed that meeting, then you are going to go on and follow the process outlined in here. You get registered for classes and complete that. Now, the other thing to be aware of is how difficult this major is. You're going to lay out a plan that's appropriate to match into a 60-hour work week. Not every week is going to be 60-hour work week, but some will. And some may even be higher than that. And so this allows you to keep some flexibility in your schedule and work through it. So based on the schedule I put together, it's about 15 credit hours. That means there'll be 30 hours of homework and study time on top of the 15. So that comes to a total of 45 hours. There's going to be room for 5 hours of research or volunteer work. Since I'm thinking pre-med, I'm going to want to get involved in volunteer activities. And so I'm going to get those going in maybe 2 to 4 hours a week. I got a job going, so I got between 10 and 12, 13 hours in there, and that all adds up in the end of 60 hours. If you find you're having to do more work, then you need to think about less credits. If on the other hand, you're doing not very much work at all, then you can significantly go higher. Though in your first semester, I highly recommend you stick at 15 max to get used to the new environment of taking classes in a major research institution instead of the experiences in your local high school. they are dynamically different experiences. Much more of the time commitment is on your own schedule, much less of it's in a dictated lecture. Okay. Overall, this means that when you look at your credit hours, you take the number of credit hours, you multiply by 3.3, and that tells you what the real-time commitment is for the class. This number changes. So if you got a semester that's all STEM classes, this number may go up to 4 or maybe even higher. And other semesters, if it was as an example, maybe some of your friends are just doing gen eds in their first semester, this number may drop below 3 to something like 2.5. So be aware of that in your social groups, that engineers have a different dynamic of what their commitment is than, say, somebody who comes in out of high school and says, I'm only doing gen eds to start with. And don't get caught up in that philosophy that's like, well, if my buddies are hanging out all the time or they're working a 40-hour job, why can't I do that? Why can't I manage my time better? Well, the reality is you're probably managing your time really well. It's just you have a lot more on the plate to do than some gen ed class. So keep that in mind. And I look forward to meeting with some of you and all of you in the fall, and hope you have a safe and happy summer.